Mandelson. And can I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting this important debate. The Prime Minister personally decided to appoint a serious, known national security risk to our most sensitive diplomatic post. Peter Mandelson was not just a man who had already been sacked twice from government for lying, not just a man who had a public relationship with a convicted paedophile, but a man with links to the Kremlin and China, links so close that they were raised as red flags with the Prime Minister before his appointment. Yesterday, the Prime Minister did not deny that he knew about these links before he appointed Mandelson. He could not deny this because, by his own admission, he had seen the documents that proved the links. I cannot overstate how serious a matter this is. The Prime Minister sent a known security risk to Washington, to a position where he would see our most important allies' top secret intelligence. What if he had seen something and leaked it to one of our enemies? How much would that have damaged our security partnership? We cannot even be sure that didn't happen. What is most extraordinary is the Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson before vetting was complete. He did this despite a letter from the then Cabinet Secretary, Lord Case, clearly expressing to the Prime Minister that the process required security vetting to be done before the appointment. So how can he then have claimed on the floor of this House that the process was followed, when he knew that it had not been? He mentioned the word process, Mr. Speaker, more than 100 times in Parliament yesterday, but he was the one who didn't follow that process. Yes. This morning, we have heard the bombshell testimony of the former Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office, Sir Robbins. Sir Robbins had a long and distinguished career serving ministers. He is not the sort of person to give us a frank personal account of how things played out last January. So when he told us today that Downing Street put the Foreign Office under constant pressure to clear Peter Mandelson, that Number 10 showed a dismissive approach to Mandelson's vetting process, when he told us that it would have been very difficult indeed to deny clearance and that doing so would have damaged US-UK relationships, we know he is giving us the slightest indication of how bad things were. That there was actually an overwhelming drive from the Prime Minister's office to ensure Peter Mandelson was installed as ambassador. He has told us that Number 10 showed no interest in the vetting, no desire to wait and ensure due process was followed. In fact, the Cabinet Office even questioned the need for Peter Mandelson to be vetted at all. The same Cabinet Office that had discovered Mandelson's links to Epstein, China and Russia in its due diligence, the Cabinet Office which the Minister is in charge of right now. Instead, Mr. Speaker, according to Robbins, the focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. And before the vetting even started, Peter Mandelson had already been granted access to, and I quote, highly classified briefing on a case-by-case basis. This is what the Prime Minister calls full due process. Mr. Speaker, I'm raising these concerns because of the seriousness of the situation the country is now in. With war in Europe, war in the Middle East, a cost of living crisis and a global energy shock, we need a Prime Minister who has a grip on national security. Yet last week, the former Labour Defence Secretary and former NATO Secretary-General, Lord Robertson, warned that the Prime Minister had a corrosive complacency when it comes to defence. This is the same man who wrote the Prime Minister's Strategic Defence Review. He is ringing the alarm bell, warning us of the grave consequences of the government refusing to take the tough choices needed to increase defence spending. This matters because if we cannot trust our Prime Minister to tell the truth about this ambassadorial appointment, the whole, full truth, a key appointment in Britain's national security architecture, it calls into question the assurances he gives us on everything else. His promises to control taxes, which he has broken. His promises not to raise borrowing, which he has broken. Promises to back business, protect our veterans, defend our farmers, and prioritise growth. all of which he has broken. And he has broken them because, at his core, he is a man with no idea what he believes. On this appointment. In 2022, the Prime Minister said, "I believe that if you're the leader, the buck stops with you." He said, "I will always stand up for my team, but I will also take responsibility for everything they do." That is what leadership is. How has he taken responsibility? It is clear that the Prime Minister has no intention of facing up to his mistakes. It's clear now that he is not a leader and he has no intention of doing the honourable thing.
On that point, will the Right Honourable Lady give way?
Yes, I will give way.
I congratulate her on securing this debate and indeed on eviscerating the Prime Minister in her speech. Does she not believe, however, that the sorry souls opposite us should have to put their money where their mouth is and that there should be a vote of no confidence in this Prime Minister in due course?
The Right Honourable Gentleman makes a very good point. I think he is right, because I don't believe the Prime Minister has the intention of doing the honourable thing himself, even though that's the standard to which he held everyone else. The decision, as I said, about whether he will ultimately take responsibility for his actions is now up to Labour MPs. The first duty, Mr. Speaker, of any Prime Minister is to keep this country safe. This Prime Minister has put the country's national security at risk. He must take responsibility. It is time for him to go.
But if we can go back to President Trump, Mr. Speaker, despite all the flattering, Trump has still caused enormous damage to our economy and to the livelihoods of the British people with his tariffs and his war with Iran. Trump still undermines NATO, makes threats against our country and our allies, and insults Britain's armed forces. And just look at what Trump said last night, that Mandelson was a really bad pick. Now, I won't dwell on the hypocrisy of Trump's words, from a man who was close friends with Epstein, who parted with him, and has so far taken no responsibility for that. From a president who still has, as his Commerce Secretary, a neighbour of Epstein, who visited Epstein's island and who lied about his relationship with him. All that is for another debate. But Trump's post, Mr. Speaker, hypocritical as it is, does show the futility of trying to appease him. It shows how pointless it is to make a decision like who to appoint as US ambassador based on what Trump would like most. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. And I hope that on top of everything else, the Prime Minister and the party opposite will reflect on that point. The approach to Trump has failed. It is time to change course and stand up to him. Stand with our European and Commonwealth allies in defence of our national interest. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a mess of the government's own making. A mess born out of a futile attempt to appease Donald Trump. And a mess that just keeps getting worse with today's revelations, uncovered by my honourable friend, the member for West Dorset, that the Prime Minister pushed for the appointment as ambassador of another Labour crony with ties to a sex offender. Catastrophically bad judgments that have created a mess that has distracted and consumed this government and stopped it from focusing on what the British people actually need.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.